A title, Cognitive Capacity Evaluators and How to Find Them. A disclaimer. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the U.S. Department of Justice. This project was supported by the U.S. Department of Justice's Elder Justice Initiative and the Office on Violence Against Women. Portions of this program are protected by copyright. If you would like to copy, display in a public setting, adapt, or distribute this program, please contact elder.justice@usdoj.gov. Dr. Harry E. Morgan, President, the Center for Geriatric and Family Psychiatry, Glastonbury, Connecticut.
A geriatric psychiatrist is a person who's met the requirements to be a general adult psychiatrist and then has done additional training and credentialing to specialize in aging and the many aspects of aging, both medical illness, sociologic, and family issues. We are MDs and therefore have a knowledge of both psychological, psychiatric issues and medical issues, and therefore I think a very helpful specialty at the interface of these fields.
An interviewer.
Does the evaluator have to be a geriatric psychiatrist? And who is qualified to give these kinds of evaluations?
I think the correct answer is what question is at hand. I think obviously for what we've talked about, geriatric psychiatrists bring a great deal of credentials. The more strongly there is a medical basis for some of the incapacity, medicines and their interactions and physical state, a geriatric internist, a geriatric specialist in medicine would be a good person. A psychologist, many psychologists have great credentials to understand mental processing, and one that has expertise relevant to a case, a geriatrically trained psychologist. Geriatric nurse specialists can bring tremendous information when the issue has to do with a number of, for instance, home care issues, abuse, neglect, and that they have the ability to both understand and interact with patients, but also know a lot about physical care. Social workers, if the issue at hand is the family dynamic and who and how to understand what's happening there, a geriatric social worker could well be useful. And this applies, I think, in other age groups as well. It's just finding the expertise that is relevant to the case. And that's how I would look to line up the type of expert.
Are capacity evaluators able to render an opinion as to the victim's capacity?
We very commonly are asked to look retrospectively at somebody's capacity. Could be potentially someone who has since died after an event happened. And therefore, since I don't have a client in front of me, a patient in front of me, I really need to have medical records or other information. That could be prior testimony or deposition testimony from family members, sworn depositions. It could be medical records around the time, prior emotional psychiatric records, criminal records, APS reports, anything that would come to bear on the issue, and again, targeted to a point in time, because most decisions or most actions happen at a particular point. So I want as much information as I can about those prior events. And absolutely, it is possible to render an opinion. Not always, however. There are situations where the record is just devoid of the kind of information we need to make the decision. And it's important for us to not make decisions if we don't have the information. But too often people fail to attempt to reconstruct, and they need to try because we can make those determinations. We know, for instance, the course of an illness, what time frames things happen in, whether it would likely be fluctuant or steady. And so the expertise of a geriatric psychiatrist can be brought to bear on retrospectively looking back.
And if you're living in a rural community or a smaller community, how do you go about finding experts?
They need to begin to establish, even before they need them, relationships with 2 or 3 key bodies. One would be the local or regional mental health center. I think, and to see if there's anyone there interested in this kind of interface. If there is a medical school within an hour away, many times medical school faculty have interest in this out of an intellectual interest and can have some curried favor that may be helpful. It may just be there's a good local physician. And again, I think it's back to having an understanding of the need at hand and know who your resources are. We increasingly encourage communities to have a network of relationships anyway, and protective service is part of that, as well as the medical community and any of the other mental health providers, police department. So that I just urge people to get to know all their local resources, and those people can provide very valuable insights and even testimony when necessary.
Logos appear. NCAL, www.ncall.us. Terra Nova Films, terranova.org. Funded by the U.S. Department of Justice Elder Abuse Initiative and the Office on Violence Against Women, www.justice.gov/elderjustice.